What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So tons of news to go over once again, and the first is a new supercar. So McLaren has revealed the McLaren GT. It's basically called the Superlight Grand Tourer, but the GT is what the main name they're using for it here. And anyway, I think it looks fantastic. It's a very cool looking sports car here, supercar. It looks a little bit like a Ferrari F430 to me in the front. That's the only thing. Otherwise, looks so good. Just nice clean lines, just very simple. Looks great. So this is outside of the sports and super series vehicles, and it's supposed to slot in between the 570S and the 720S in both pricing and performance. So it uses a modified version of the monocell carbon fiber tub from the 570S, so that one that's a little bit smaller, but then it modifies that, and it also modifies the 4-liter twin turbo V8, which it also uses like all the other McLarens, but this one has smaller turbos for quicker spool times, they say, and a torquier feel than other McLarens. This also is going to be a pretty good amount of performance here. So it's got 612 horsepower in this version of this engine, 465 pound-feet of torque. So that's way less than the 720S, of course, but still a nice bump up from the 570S. So again, right in the middle there. It's also about 200 pounds heavier than a 570S, being bigger and more comfortable. Again, this is supposed to be like the 570 GT taken up to the next level, basically, as far as comfort and stuff. And so because of that, curb weight is still pretty low, though, with a actual curb weight. Now, that's with like a full tank of gas and everything. It's 3,384 pounds. So still not bad. A lot of these other supercar companies quote dry weights, and so it's hard to kind of compare, but that's still a very lightweight vehicle, again, having a carbon fiber tub and everything, and still is crazy fast, though. 0 to 60 is going to be 3.1 seconds. It has a 0 to 124 mile per hour speed of 9 seconds and a top speed of over 200. So really impressive stuff still, again, even though this isn't as bonkers as the 720S. The main competition for this, they're saying, is supposed to be like the Audi R8, Ferrari Portofino, Aston Martin DB11, and 911 Turbo S. So a little bit, less aggressive in its setup than stuff like the 720S and, its competitors like the Huracan and whatnot. But it's still lighter than all of those Grand Tours for sure. Like the competitors, though, the focus on this vehicle was Grand Touring comfort, but in a lighter package than the competitors. So it's McLaren's version of a Grand Tourer. Still has the very wide side sills because you're, again, using that carbon fiber tub and stuff. So not quite as easy to get in and out of than, your usual car. The interior is similar to a 720S, as you can see here, but it does get a new Android-based infotainment system that McLaren says is much better than previous systems. And so that's why one of the big advancements they're saying, compared to some of the competitors that might have better infotainment in the past, they think this new system helps kind of put them on a level playing field with that as well. So that's interesting. In the rear, you see there's a cargo area there where it can fit a golf bag or 2 pairs of skis. There's also a frunk up front, of course, that has a good amount of additional storage there too. Another cool touch is that the car still has hydraulic steering for better steering feel, which is cool. It also has proactive damping control, which can intelligently adjust dampers based on drive modes, much like any other system these days. But this one is, again, more set up for comfort, especially in its comfort mode, but there are other, sportier modes, and it'll firm that up and, make it, again, a very impressive handler as well, if that's what you're looking for. Pricing is going to be starting at $210,000, which is actually pretty reasonable. That's 80 grand less than a 720S for very close performance. I mean, yeah, you're down, 100 horsepower or whatever, but still seems to be very impressive. It's all running through a 7-speed dual clutch, by the way, like all the other McLarens are. So anyway, at $210,000, that puts it around the same price as a 570S Spider. So it's actually really well priced, I think, in my opinion, and makes for a pretty solid bargain. Anyway, this is going to be on sale in the US late this summer, actually, so coming very quickly as well. So cool to see that. Audi has revealed the refreshed 2020 A4 this week, and still based on the current generation here, but gets a new front end and back end and, new bumpers and stuff, new lights. The lights do look shrunken down, though, from like an A6. That's kind of the inspiration I think they were going for here. But I think it actually looks really really good. I think it nicely translates to the A4 here. It makes it look much better than the current vehicle, which looks a little frumpy to me currently. Otherwise, inside here, it's pretty similar, with the main difference being a new touchscreen infotainment system from other new Audis, which is also a fantastic improvement in my opinion. They're finally, this one doesn't even have any kind of rotary controller. Like Mercedes is kind of halfway there. They have the touchscreen, but also have a touchpad. This Audi's going like, nope, we're not even giving you the option for a knob anymore. All touchscreen stuff, which is, I think a great improvement. And so anyway, it has that, although you still only get one center screen there instead of the dual screens you get on higher end Audis. This was a European news release, so details on the mechanicals are still unconfirmed for the US, as is pricing and release date and all that kind of stuff. So still up in the air on all that, but it seems likely it's going to have the same engines basically and transmissions that they currently offer. Might have slight bumps in power or something like that, but that's about it. But anyway, these are going to be arriving in Europe this fall and will likely arrive in the US this winter, approximately. So anyway, good to see that. Porsche, they revealed, whenever they did the Cayenne Coupe reveal, they did the regular Cayenne and then they did the turbo. And of course, we knew there was going to be an S in between, but we didn't have that officially confirmed until now. They just announced this week the Cayenne S Coupe. And so it uses the same setup as any regular Cayenne S does, meaning you get 434 horsepower, 405 pound-feet of torque, which is technically one less pound-feet than a regular Cayenne S, but, not any difference. 0 to 60 is 4.7 seconds. They're available to order now with delivery starting this fall, with pricing starting at $89,850, including destination, which is 13 grand more than the base Cayenne Coupe, but is about 41 grand cheaper than the Cayenne Coupe Turbo, or Cayenne Turbo Coupe, I guess. So that's, a nice savings, and you still get basically the same type of engine as the Turbo, still have lots of punch there, and so it seems to be a pretty good bargain there for the Cayenne S as far as Porsche SUVs go, and so interesting to see that. For some slightly more surprising Cayenne news, though, Motor Trend's Johnny Lieberman this week heard from an unnamed source that Porsche is working on a more extreme version of the Cayenne Coupe called the GT5, supposedly. I guess that name was trademarked, so that's why everyone's thinking that's what's going to go on. Anyway, this Cayenne Coupe version would be using the Lamborghini Urus's engine, supposedly, according to Mr. Lieberman here. And so it's going to be using that same 4-liter twin-turbo V8 that's already in the regular Cayenne Turbo Coupe, but the Lambo tune gives it an extra 100 horsepower and 60 more pound-feet of torque for a total of 641 horsepower and 627 pound-feet. So obviously there's more to the mechanicals of it than just the different tune that give it that extra 100 horsepower, but so that's it. The thinking is that it's going to get that engine. I would be surprised if Lamborghini let them, but Porsche's kind of been helping Lamborghini out with a lot of this stuff anyway, so I guess they have the right to do that. But Autoblog suggesting this GT5 version of the Cayenne would probably be lighter and a little more raw than the Urus, and so that's kind of their angle with it, is making a stripped out SUV. But again, if you're buying an SUV, just buy a sports car if you want something lightweight. I said the same thing when the Cayenne Coupe was revealed with an optional carbon fiber roof. Like, if you want a low center of gravity, don't buy an SUV. Don't buy another carbon fiber roof for, $10,000 or whatever it costs. Like, just don't buy an SUV if you want a low center of gravity. It just makes no sense to me. It's like making a cruise ship out of carbon fiber. Like, what is the point? It's a boat. Like, just let it be a boat and leave it at that. But that's my own take on that. Anyway, so that's, I guess, one of the things in the pipeline here. But it would be focusing on handling over straight line speed, because there is also in the pipeline supposedly a Turbo SE hybrid version of the Cayenne Coupe coming, and that, even if you use the same power that has in the Panamera Turbo SE hybrid currently, then you're still looking at more power than even the Urus offers. I think you're up a couple dozen horsepower over the Urus already, and it could be pushed well over 700 horsepower if they wanted it to, I'm sure. So lots of high horsepower, very heavy, large, tall, boxy Porsche SUVs coming that are going to be fast and impressive. But again, they're SUVs. I just don't understand the appeal, but it's all good. They sell, and so interesting to see that. But we have some better Porsche news here. If you're exhausted with all the SUV news, we have some Porsche sports car news, thankfully. And that division of Porsche seems to still be very much on the right track. So we have an exciting report from Autocar this week suggesting that glorious 4-liter flat six engine that is currently in the GT3 that has the 9,000 RPM redline that was recently refined for the 911 Speedster, and so it gets more power and a bunch of other things. Supposedly that engine is going to be used in several other Porsche models, and this is the best news of the week in my opinion. So listen to this. According to the head of Porsche's GT division who spoke with Autocar about this engine, he said, "We've invested in the future with this engine. I can't comment on future projects, but we would be stupid not to reuse this engine somewhere." Great quote. And so the new improvements for the Speedster that it got for this engine are individual throttle bodies for better throttle response, a new injector setup, and an exhaust that's 22 pounds lighter. And so we've already seen, the Cayman GT4 and the Boxster Spider out running around. So those already, going to be confirmed, and that's likely going to be getting a detuned version of that engine. So you're going to have, again, the Boxster and the Cayman thankfully going back to a flat six, at least for these special edition versions. So Car Scoops also chimed in, and they think it's going to be about 425 horsepower for that GT4 and Spider versions of those. It does 502 horsepower in the 911 Speedster, but that's, again, like a rare ultimate version, so expect it to probably be detuned for most of these. But then, in addition to the GT4 and Spider, Boxster Cayman combo, there's also touring versions of those that were recently spied as well. Now, I don't have rights to those spy photos, so I can't show those to you, but, you can search for those online if you're curious, but basically it's just toned down versions of those, again very similar to the GT3 Touring in its philosophy, and those could get the same engine and power or maybe slightly detuned. We'll have to wait and see, but in the GT3 I think it makes the same power, so I'm hoping we get the same power, just a more comfortable setup there for those who don't want the stiffer suspension of the GT4 setup. But anyway, regardless, more models with that glorious flat six. And then Car Advice last year even got a dealer leak suggesting there's going to be a Cayman GT4 RS coming as well. And so that could even use a pumped up version of this engine, possibly even the same 502 horsepower, although that's really dreaming. It might be a little less still, but also another vehicle that's getting this engine. Lastly, there's of course the new 992 911 GT3 and the GT3 RS, which are going to be using versions of this engine most likely as well. They've already committed to saying it's not going to be going turbo. They briefly thought about that, and then everyone hated that idea, and so thankfully they're sticking with a naturally aspirated engine. It could possibly do the same, 500 odd horsepower as the 911 Speedster, since that's again the new gen version and stuff. But we'll have to wait and see. But given the popularity of the GT3 Touring model for the 991.2s, there's a good chance there is going to also be a touring version of the next-gen GT3 here, and that'll probably get this engine as well. So, if you're keeping count at home here, we're talking about 8 new models after the Speedster that could get this glorious engine. So, as much as, we despise oftentimes, these SUVs and stuff that Porsche does, it does help finance this type of stuff. And if they need to put carbon fiber roofs in all the Cayennes to finance this, so be it. That's okay, because this is going to be fantastic. The Porsche sports car lineup in the next 5 years is going to be amazing. So that's very exciting to see. Some other stuff that's getting faster. Mini has revealed the 2020 John Cooper Works Clubman and Countryman, which get a huge performance improvement here. So they both now get the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder that does 301 horsepower and 331 pound-feet of torque. And so this is basically, it's getting all the same mechanicals as the BMW X2 M35i version. And that also shares a platform with these minis, so that is why it shares everything else. So the engine internals have been beefed up to handle the higher boost with a stronger crankshaft and new pistons and rods, all that type of stuff. 0 to 60 times, though, are 1.5 seconds faster thanks to all these changes. So the Clubman now does 0 to 60 in a very quick 4.9 seconds. The Countryman does it in 5.1. And being under 5 seconds 0 to 60, this kind of justifies the Mini's higher price tag. Because for a while there, you're getting cars with 6 seconds 0 to 60 times for 45, 50 grand. It's like, there is no value there whatsoever. Now, it's still not a great bargain, obviously, but it's a much better value performance-wise than it used to be. But it's not all good news here. That is the only thing. So they get all-wheel drive as standard, which is fine. Although it'd be kind of nice to get the Clubman with front-wheel drive. But 300 horsepower to the front wheels is always tricky unless you're a Civic Type R or something like that. Anyway, the all-wheel drive is set up to do front-wheel drive most of the time until it detects slip, and then it does go to rear-wheel drive, assistance there. But it's not a rear-wheel drive bias system, so still going to handle very much like a hot hatch, which is good. But the bad thing is that because of this mechanical combo, there is no manual transmission offered anymore for the John Cooper Works version here of the Clubman and the Countryman. I believe the other versions, of course, you can still get a manual. Now we'll have to see, because there's also rumors that this powertrain is also going to be showing up in the John Cooper Works version of the Mini GP that's coming, and if that was not offered in a manual, that would be sad. So I really hope they find some way to work a manual into these eventually. But as of right now, and for the Clubman and Countryman, it's only 8-speed automatic, no manual in those. But again, with the low take rates of manuals these days, it's not a surprising business decision. But anyway, there's also additional chassis bracing and revised suspension. You can get an optional adaptive shock setup if you'd like in these too. Brakes are bigger now with 4 pistons in the rear as well. So, I mean, really beefy brake setup. The brakes are also larger all around for the rotors and stuff. Visual changes are almost non-existent. There's the Clubman gets these new Union Jack tail lamps in the back and a different grille. The Countryman is actually unchanged, so it doesn't look any different than the old one. Nothing new on the inside either, so this is, again, just a nice mechanical improvement. That's it, which is cool. There's no price or release date for these yet either, but the current cars start in the high 30,000s, just under 40,000 there for the Countryman. So I would expect them to start around the same, but probably it'll get a little bit of a price hike with all these, more powerful internals. There's no way it can't. And so I'm guessing it's going to crack 40 grand for these. And that's, again, before options, which is like BMW's options list, which means they can get quite lengthy and expensive very quickly. So you're looking at realistically these being $50,000 vehicles. And then at that point, it's like, okay, you only get 300 horsepower for 50 grand. I would rather have a Kia Stinger GT or something, have, an extra 65 odd horsepower. Speaking of a new car losing the manual option, though, unfortunately, I have a little bit of bad news for Hyundai fans. So Hyundai announced this week that the 2020 Elantra is going to be automatic only for all of them, including the Elantra Sport, which was really a favorite among enthusiasts. It's a great value package with, especially with the manual. You got a lot of car for your money, a lot of performance too. And so now you're going to have to go with an automatic if you want that. If you do want a manual in this class, just keep in mind there are still plenty of options. You can still get the new Kia Forte GT they just announced a few months ago. That's going to get this same powertrain as the Elantra Sport, and you can get that with a manual whenever that does come out. They didn't announce pricing for that yet, but should be around similar pricing. There's also the Jetta GLI, which is a few grand more, but does come in a manual in all trims. And then there's also the Civic Si, which of course the Civic Si starts around 24, right around the Elantra, and so you can always go for a Civic Si as well. Veloster Turbo is an option too if you can live with one less door and slightly less rear legroom there. And while we're talking about manuals, not to be a Debbie Downer, but one other thing I wanted to mention here that came out this week is regarding the decline of the manual. And so CarBuzz actually at the Super launch, I think, got the take rate numbers from Toyota for their manual transmissions, the models they sell, as far as how popular they are. And I guess this was probably with a whole discussion involving the Supra and why it's not offered with a manual. But anyway, so Toyota revealed that for the new Corolla hatchback, 15% of people went for the manual, which is an okay take rate for, again, a non-performance vehicle. So not terrible, but the Corolla sedan, only 1% picked the manual. So out of 100 Corollas sold, 1 was bought with a manual. And this was, again, for last year. So this is a little bit of a bummer. Again, I'm hoping with the manual getting a little more popular, hopefully here with this new gen version of the Corolla sedan, which is just now starting to roll out this year, hopefully that number will pick up. And it's great they are continuing to offer that manual even for the sedan. So you might argue, okay, well, that's because the Corolla doesn't have a performance version. So, of course, it's not a performance car. No one's going to get a manual. But Toyota also revealed the take rate for the Toyota 86 last year and its manual transmission, and it's better, but not amazing. It's still only 33% of people picked a manual 86. The other 2/3 picked the automatic transmission in the 86, which isn't a horrible automatic, but I feel like the manual is definitely the way to go with the 86 to have the most fun. But yeah, only 1/3 of people wanted the manual, even in a sports car like the 86. So that shows us, the type of challenges we're facing here with bringing back the manual transmission. But it's not all bad news. It kind of does seem to depend on the vehicle. So for actually Mazda, they actually spoke with Autoblog, and Autoblog reached out to them to say, hey, what are your take rates on the Miata? And Mazda revealed that the manual is still the most popular option for the Miata. So 76% of Miata buyers chose the manual for the regular MX-5. Now the RF, retractable hardtop version, was still the majority manual, but it was closer. It was 52% went for the manual, and 48% went for the automatic with those. But at least for the soft top Miata, to have 76% go for the manual is very encouraging. So again, it kind of, I guess, comes down to the type of sports car it is. But I think that's also why Toyota's, saying, look, when you're spending over 50 grand, how many of those people want to buy a manual? And there's some, but it'd probably be a worse take rate than even the 86. And, so that's why maybe they'll do a limited edition Supra with a manual or something and get, a few thousand out there for the few people who actually will truly buy one. I don't know. I mean, there have been a lot of people that have been very seriously vocal and able to buy Supras saying, hey, we want manuals. So we'll have to see. Maybe they'll try it for a year or two and see how it sells. But anyway, interesting to hear those take rates. Back to some Hyundai news here for a minute, though. The Hyundai Group just announced an investment of $90 million into Rimac this week for new performance vehicles primarily, which is, so, performance isn't dead even if the manual's dying. So that's good news to hear. So Hyundai contributed $72 million of that chunk, and then Kia put in the other $18 million. So their goal combined is to have 44 eco-friendly models on the market by 2025. Now, what that exactly means is very vague. Other companies have been a little more specific about either being plug-in hybrids or, some type of full EV thing by then. But anyway, supposedly 2 sports cars will be using these Rimac components to lead the high-performance electrified vehicle market and enhance its status as a game changer in clean mobility. So supposedly these 2 prototypes will be shown next year, actually, so coming pretty quickly here. And the press release said that the companies will work closely together to develop prototypes for an electric version of Hyundai Motors' N-brand midship sports car concept and a high-performance fuel cell electric vehicle, with the intent to bring them to market at a later time. So they're developing 2 supercars or sports cars or whatever, and they're both going to actually be built, or at least that's the intention here. So they didn't name it, but when they said midship sports car concept, they don't have any mid-engine stuff other than the RM16 concept, which is basically like a mid-engine Veloster that never came to fruition outside of a few prototypes. And so I guess they're going to make that as the EV. I would think they would do something cooler looking, honestly, but I guess that's what they're going for with that. The other one, it says a fuel cell hybrid, a hydrogen thing. That could be potentially used in there was that Genesis Essentia concept, which was revealed at last year's New York Auto Show, which was beautiful. And they said they would like to build something like that, and so maybe it's something like that they put out. But with the whole hydrogen thing still being much slower to be adopted and accepted by everyone than normal electric stuff, I would honestly just rather see them invest in just doing everything battery electric instead of the hydrogen stuff. But we'll have to see what comes to fruition. It'll be a very interesting thing to follow here over the next few years. But it's great that they're leading the charge with electric vehicles, with performance electric vehicles. They don't have to. They could just make some, random little box on wheels and have that be their EVs. But instead they're like, no, we're going for high performance EVs to kind of get people excited about this and then bring in the normal sedans and stuff, which is an admirable thing because we know that sports cars, again, don't make money. Companies don't have to do these, and the fact that they are is very exciting and great. So interesting to hear that. Speaking of new Kias and stuff, though, they revealed a couple sketches of their new small crossover that'll be coming to South Korea and India later this year, and likely to the US soon after that. I believe this is going to be based on the Hyundai Kona, but I'm not totally sure on that. But Kia says it's created for the millennial generation and will have a wide range of features and technologies suited to younger buyers, while also providing the space and capabilities of a traditional SUV in a compact package. So, that's all kind of vague and, I don't know. So probably just mostly marketing speak, but, it'll be a new crossover for Kia, and they need something, a little bit smaller. So I can see this making a lot of sense, and looks pretty cool from the dramatic sketches we see so far, but, we'll have to wait and see, whenever that debuts. Could be the debut this fall in LA or something like that. Could be sooner too. We'll have to wait and see. Another small SUV, though, that's likely coming to the US and is going to be bringing back an old name with it, is the Chevy Trailblazer. So, GM applied for the Trailblazer Active trademark and patent this month, actually. And actually, in China, they already last month revealed the Trailblazer at the Shanghai Auto Show. Now, we don't even get half the stuff that China gets as far as GM and, the very outlandish Buicks and stuff they get over there. But it looks to be about the same size as a Trax. Maybe slightly bigger here, but definitely smaller than the Equinox for sure and the Blazer. But GM Authority, they put out a report about this, and they believe the Trailblazer will replace the Trax. And I think that's the most likely thing in my mind too. But Motor Trend thinks they could slot between the Trax and the Equinox. And so to support Motor Trend's theory, one thing I noticed is that, so they also revealed at this Auto Shanghai a new Chevy Tracker, which is really a throwback. But that was shown for China once again, and that's a little bit of a milder look than you can see from the Trailblazer there. And that could be the new Trax, because that's a little bit more, middle of the road. And I guess, maybe they're thinking small crossover buyers don't all want something very angry and aggressive looking. So I can see both sides. Motor Trend could be right, or it could be that GM Authority is right too. Either one is totally viable in my opinion. But a few months back, we did see camoed vehicles of whatever this platform is, and it looked like there was one that looked like a baby Blazer. So that makes me think it's going to be this Trailblazer and not a Trax. But we'll have to see. Other things, though, is, along with that, there was spied the Buick version, which is going to be the new Encore, and a GMC version. And that's another thing, is the GMC version was rumored a while back to be called the Granite. But since now GM actually filed for late last year the trademark for the Envoy name again, which again, mid-2000s, enthusiasts will remember that stuff. And so those actually back then, the Envoy and the Trailblazer used to be mechanically related, obviously very similar in size and stuff. And so it would make sense for them to be related this go around with the, Envoy and the Trailblazer, but it would be a little bit of a bummer if those names ending up on small, compact, fuel-sipping crossovers and not the more aggressive, larger SUVs they used to be on. But anyway, this Trailblazer is expected by everyone to be revealed sometime this year, and possibly even be a 2020 model year vehicle here in the States. So we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, interesting to see that. And this week we got a long look here into Volkswagen's future here over the next 10 years. And some of this was like official announcements, and some of this was insider sources and stuff. So Automobile Magazine did a big long report, and I'll include the link in the description if you want to read the whole thing. I'm going to try and go over the basic highlights of this as briefly as I can, but it's probably going to be a few minutes here because there's a lot to unpack with their plans here for the next 10 years. So Volkswagen Group officially this week announced they will be having 70 new EVs on sale by 2028, which is 20 more than they originally were planning. And again, this is Volkswagen Group, so that we're talking about every brand that Volkswagen owns, not just Volkswagen Motor Group themselves. So anyway, they're saying they also want EVs to make up over 40% of all the models that they offer from all their brands by 2030, which actually sounds kind of low considering it's 70 new EVs. And they want to be fully CO2 neutral by 2050, both for the vehicles and their production processes. And so that's their goal for that. CEO Herbert Diess said, in the long run, we want to scale back the portfolio of conventional models and concentrate instead on the fast-growing family of EVs. So that sounds like stuff's getting killed off. We already are going to have stuff like the new Beetle getting killed off. The Golf is not coming to the States, most likely. Those types of things being streamlined. But according to one of Automobile Magazine's sources, Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche are the only 3 brands under Volkswagen there that will stick around in their current forms, according to this report. So everything else is going to be radically changed. Lots and lots of part sharing, platform sharing, all that type of stuff. Way less unique stuff. So this is where things get a little concerning. But again, nothing is confirmed or finalized. A lot of this is still speculation and insider sources. It's oddly specific, so I believe this is very credible stuff. But again, none of this has been confirmed. So, don't flip out just yet about some of this news. So anyway, the other brands under Volkswagen here that are going to be up in the air, Automobile claims that Ital Design, which is that new EV brand that they have, they obviously is from the old design arm of Ferrari and stuff in the past. Anyway, that new brand and Ducati will supposedly be spun off relatively soon and sold to other people, or be out of Volkswagen as far as at least the financials go. And then the whole Bugatti brand is supposedly going to be gifted to Ferdinand Piëch, who's the grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, who was also the CEO of Volkswagen for a long time, and he's the guy who came up with the Veyron and all that type of stuff, and actually reestablished Bugatti in general. So supposedly he's getting it. I mean, he's, not a young guy, so I don't know what he's going to do with Bugatti. Maybe sell it off to someone else, but Bugatti could be completely separate, at least by 2030. So again, kind of crazy. Also, Lamborghini could be up in the air here. Now, it's such a iconic brand that it's going to be worth something, and someone will buy them if they do want to sell them. So it's not like Lamborghini will be going away, but could, be under new ownership, or it could be the Volkswagen decides to invest in them. Again, this is all undecided, but, some of the stuff that's talked about here is saying, Mr. Dice, the CEO, said about referring to Lamborghini and stuff, he said, "I am not prepared to let every sports car have its own bespoke drivetrain." That's Lamborghini. They have their own unique drivetrains, and that's what people love about them, the V10s and the V12s. So those who complained about the Supra, again, I hate to keep going back to that, but that's the future. That's what you're going. Even Lamborghini, they can't afford to keep putting their own unique engines in these vehicles. They're going to have to do partnerships. They're going to be part sharing. Most likely the engines will come from Porsche and stuff, if they even have combustion engines at all. But they're not going to have unique stuff, and that's just, it seems, the way of the future. That's just the way it goes. And so anyway, he's actually saying the future Lamborghinis could potentially even use new Audi motors and stuff like that. So, I mean, really, some of this stuff, if it actually turns out to be true, there's going to be some riots, I think. But anyway, lastly, some other crazy stuff here. Bentley is supposedly the one that's the most at danger, with a senior strategist telling Automobile, "Why invest on a backward-looking enterprise when you can support a trendsetter? A proud history and excellent craftsmanship alone do not cut it anymore." So, it sounds like Bentley's kind of, I guess, dead weight for Volkswagen in some ways. And so the ultimate rumor here actually, and again, just rumor, I want to just highlight that. The rumor here is that Bentley might not even get any of these new platforms that Volkswagen and Porsche and all of them are developing, and instead Bentley may end up just being sold to someone else at some point down the road. Again, I don't think they're even looking for a buyer yet, but they're just, if they can't justify the cost of Bentley, they'll just sell them. And that's how intense this new CEO is with just cutting costs. It's like, we're going to sell off brands left and right. We're going to just streamline everything, part share everything. It's all going to be, modular and very shareable. And so that's the first half of this. Now, that's most of the bad news here. So, there's also some exciting stuff that came out of this report here. So, Automobile, they were sharing a bunch of Volkswagen's ideas for future vehicles, and again, none of these are confirmed, just ideas that are being thrown around. Late this year, supposedly, a Beetle-inspired SUV concept is going to be shown, or could be shown, and also EV versions of a new Karmann Ghia and a Volkswagen Thing are a possibility, and I think we've heard rumors of those in the past. Basically, that MEB electric platform can be used for anything, so it's just, it's a Lego car platform where you just drop bodies onto to that, skateboard thing and you're set. So, I mean, the possibilities are endless really with that. So that's one thing they're saying there's going to probably be some type of four-door coupe, a full-size sedan, and even the idea of a production version of the IDR race car. And that could be exciting as well, especially if, again, Hyundai's getting in with some type of performance sports car EV. Volkswagen could have their solution too with the IDR. Also, they're even considering a completely new brand, which is weird considering they want to kill off brands, but they're considering a new brand to fight Tesla and stuff that would be like an urban EV only brand. And that is something they're considering, but I really don't think that's going to go anywhere. Because look at Smart. They just killed off Smart cars here in the States, and that's basically what this sounds like with this urban thing they're considering. For some other brands, though, again, parts sharing is going to be the bottom line here. So the ideas are including that the new Porsche Cayman and Boxster are actually going to share a platform with the next-gen Audi TT, which will be called the Audi TTE, because I guess that's going to be EV as well. And also, now this is where Lamborghini fans are going to start to get upset. That Cayman Boxster platform could also be the platform for a new Lamborghini, a baby Lamborghini called the Urraco, which is, again, an old Lamborghini from the 70s that they would bring back and be a baby, cheap Lamborghini. Who knows how cheap, but could be pretty wild there. And again, would be electric. EV stuff. And then you're going to have the Taycan and e-tron GT platform. That's going to provide Audi with a 2+2 coupe and convertible and a top-of-the-line crossover, supposedly. Again, just ideas, but that's kind of the thinking. Now, if Bentley does justify it staying around, then it could get an EV fastback SUV from this platform too, something sportier than the Bentayga and stuff, but also be fully electric. Again, if they decide it's worth investing in. And even Lamborghini could get a 2+2 EV coupe from the Taycan platform, and that would be an Espada type revival. So again, another Lamborghini from the 70s, and something that's going to be a little less, aggressive than current Lamborghinis are, and could be just a premium brand above Porsche kind of in a way. So we'll have to see. Lastly, they also still are mentioning they would like to do a Porsche and or Lamborghini hypercar with solid state batteries that would do 1,000 kilowatts of power and 1,500 newton meters of torque, which translates to 1,341 horsepower and 1,106 pound-feet of torque. So that's all the Volkswagen news as far as that goes. I know it's a lot of information overload. So, like I said, you can go take your time and read that automobile report if you'd like to hear all the details. And again, still much of it up in the air, but very interesting nonetheless to kind of look into the crystal ball there and see what may be coming down the road. For some simpler Volkswagen news, the interior of the new Golf was spied. Just a nice, simple, looks pretty simplified there on the interior too, just a little more high-tech. You got the digital gauges and the digital screen there in the middle, but otherwise, nothing too exciting, but it is nice to see a manual transmission is present there, and of course that's only going to be for Europe, and we probably again won't even get the Golf, but that kind of gives you an idea of what to expect for the new GTI interior, which again, the new GTI, I think they also said in that previous report, could be coming around 2021, so you might have a little bit to wait for that. So anyone that's holding out on a GTI currently, you might as well buy one now and then upgrade in 2 years or something. But anyway, interesting to hear that. Another vehicle that was spied this week was the refreshed Nissan Titan, which I believe will be a 2020 model year vehicle. Thanks to my spy photographer Brian Williams for these shots. And so it looks to be getting a new front end and new back end, although the headlights look to be a similar shape to the current ones, so it might just be mostly focused on incorporating a new grille and slightly tweaked headlamps and stuff still. But if it is a 2020 model vehicle, then that means we will definitely be seeing this before the end of the year, definitely probably in the next few months. And so anyway, interesting to see that. And there's also a very quick but pretty crazy little follow-up story from last week. If you remember, I talked about the investor call where Ferrari was talking about their new hybrid supercar they're going to be revealing this month. And in that call, which the Motley Fool posted a whole transcript online for, in that report, apparently there's a bunch of other stuff in this whole call. And one thing that the biggest piece of news here probably is Ferrari CEO was quoted as saying, "Eventually we will no longer supply engines to Maserati." And they later said the supply will be stopping in either 2021 or 2022. So Maserati is losing one of the best parts of Maserati, the Ferrari engines. And so without that, who knows what Maserati will do. There's talks of how they wanted to go EV, but they also just last week said they're very focused on combustion engines going forward too. So where do you get them from? Do you get them from the FCA parts bin, or do you make some new partner and work with them? We'll have to wait and see. I don't know. It's totally up in the air as far as Maserati goes, and that's a short time span. I mean, 2021 to 2022, that's a quick, I mean, for them to have a replacement by 2 years from now, like they would have to already be into production or into development of that stuff like now, which means they might have to just dip into the FCA parts bin and grab a Dodge motor for a few years until I can come up with something. We'll have to see. Hopefully it's not just going to come to that, but anyway, interesting to hear that. And the last bit of news this week is Acura has quietly rolled out a $20,000 incentive on the NSX for the 2019 Acura NSX here. So this brings the base price of the NSX down to $139,300 now, which, considering the performance of the NSX, is a bargain. It was already a pretty good bargain, honestly, even whenever it was 160 grand, but now at 140, just gets to be even better of a value. It's a really impressive vehicle from everything I've seen. I still have yet to drive one. Maybe I'll drive one this year. We'll have to see. But anyway, great to hear about that incentive. But yes, that's it for all the news this week, guys. Let me know your thoughts on all this crazy stuff in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.